Shalom, Shmuel here from CFOIC. Great to be here. And today I'm super excited because I have a very special guest speaker. And it's special because, number one, if you can see, if you don't see that, it's very early in the morning for me and it's very late for him at night because he's from Sydney, Australia. And number two is that we met in the past in Samaria. And number three, Timothy, our guest today, is going to talk about the topic that we're trying to cover in the last couple of weeks, and these fires of Israel. And I think you will hear an expert that will give an explanation better than anybody. Timothy, good night.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm well. It's good to see you again. Good to see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing. And I'm just going to start from the beginning. If you can present yourself.
Hi, my name's Timothy Wainwright. I'm from Sydney, Australia. I am the Executive Director of Operation Fire Support, which is an NGO that I started with the sole purpose of saving life and property anywhere in the world to anyone who is affected by fires. And I got involved in Israel in 2019 because in 2018 there were all the incendiary attacks with the balloons, especially around Gaza areas, and I saw that there was a need for firefighting assistance because the Ketot Kananut were fighting fires in t-shirts, and they had very basic equipment and didn't look like they had much training. So I got involved and I came over in 2019 and did 1 month of fire training and donated some equipment, and that started a really special program in Israel. Really, I came back again in 2022 for 1 month again of training with the emergency response teams in communities, and that's where I met Shmuel and in Samaria. And on my second trip, I realized there really needs to be more long-lasting benefits for Israel, where they lack basic firefighter uniforms. The equipment is needs to be improved. There also needs to be wildfire prevention programs started to help communities withstand fires better, and so that property will not be destroyed so much and people will be more safe in their communities. I came back in 2024 for another month. It was my most recent mission just a month ago. And the third time in Israel, not much had changed. And so I decided I need to start a program. So I want to go to Israel for 4 years full time to help the emergency response teams unify nationally and have national standards for training, uniforms, equipment, and wildfire prevention. Yeah.
Timothy, I want to stop you and I want to bring you back. Um, Give us some introduction to your past, your experience, and what brought you to the realization you can give you from your knowledge to other countries, other places, and more specific, if you can elaborate, because most of our viewers are not from Australia. What makes Australia such a unique place to be a learning field for you, for your experience?
Well, it goes back to my childhood. My father was a firefighter, and I didn't know this, but early in when he was in his 20s, he lived in a country town in the west of New South Wales, and he was actually taught by Aboriginal people how to do traditional burning. The Aborigines have lived in Australia for 60,000 years before white people came to Australia about 200 years ago, and they had been managing the bush just with using fire to clear the forest, but it did it in a way that was healthy for the forest, and that it helped new plants to grow, and the animals would come and eat the new grass and plants, and Aborigines would eat the animals, and it was a circle of life. And the that's unique to Australia, because when white people came to Australia, we sort of stopped the burning. We stopped the Aborigines doing a lot of their native practices. And what we found was, in our history, we had a lot of severe wildfires because of that, because we weren't doing we weren't living with nature the way they did. And so in the last 100 years, we realized we need to start doing controlled burning more to reduce fire hazards. And we need to also do it in a way that's beneficial for the ecosystems, so that the dead material can be burnt off, but the trees are not killed by intense wildfires. So we're able to control that. So my father was taught these techniques, and I didn't realize it when I was learning from my father, that I was actually learning both from a fire service background, but also native techniques that go back 60,000 years. So it's a unique background that I have in fire safety. I was firefighter in Australia. I joined as a volunteer firefighter when I was 14. And so this year marks my 30th year in firefighting. I'm 45. I hope I don't look that old, but I am. And I've got, this year will be 30 years in firefighting. And I also run a fire company in Sydney. I do high-level fire safety audits for the Department of Transport in the underground rail system. So I have high-level qualifications in fire safety and also training. So I'm an educator as well. My passion is in wildfires and training. So that's a perfect combination for Israel. I got involved in Israel because I saw a problem. I saw the balloons burning people's farms and burning the environment. And I saw people trying to deal with it the best way they could with what they had. And I knew that I could help. I could help Israelis protect themselves better, fight fires more effectively and safer. And also with fire prevention, it's not really something that's done in Israel. Most communities don't have wildfire prevention plans. That's something that I can help with also. And I'm very passionate about this because we can actually prevent communities from being destroyed by fire. It's much better than rebuilding. Yep.
So after such a long life doing it to fire, second generation, maybe more, we you get to the point that you're already in your 40s, I assume, and then you say, I want to bring my knowledge to others. So share with me the experience coming for the first time, specifically for Israel. What was the gap, and what were the things that you were amazed of that we are still not adopting in when you came?
Well, I came specifically because I saw a specific problem with wildfires affecting people's farms in the kibbutzim, moshavim, and the big gaps in capability I saw were the community emergency response teams, the Katok Kunanut, not having the firefighter uniforms to protect them from fire, and not having helmets and gloves and simple things like this. And the equipment, the ATVs and the trailers are very, very basic, and they're not the best equipment in a lot of situations, but it's all you have. So the fire rescue service in Israel is very, very good. They have great equipment, excellent training. They are true professionals, but there's just not enough of them to help all the farmers. And a lot of the farmers were telling me that the fire service do an excellent job, but sometimes it'll be an hour before they see them, or sometimes if there's lots of fires, they don't see any fire truck at all. And so it's not the firefighters' fault. But there is a real need for the communities to be self-sufficient, to be well trained, well prepared, well equipped, so that they can actually deal with these fires without getting hurt. And a lot of guys were telling me that they were getting burns because they're firefighting in t-shirts and in clothing that would burn holes in or melt to the skin. So that's a real problem. Yeah. So in the training that I provide in the fire training, we have 3 sessions. There's firefighter safety, and we go through how to dress, what not to wear, how to identify dangers before you get into the dangerous situation. Then there's wildfire behavior and suppression. And then the 3rd session is wildfire practical. So in a field, putting out real fires using techniques that we learn in the classroom. and it's a 1 day course. It goes all day, so it's about 8 hours long.
So I can share with the people that if you remember when we met, not only that we met, I was your translator.
Yeah,
So we came to this small fire station. I would say it was in Oranit or El Canas, somewhere like that, right? And it looks pretty modern and nice. I must say, like I'm a citizen. It's my first time ever going into a fire station, and I've learned a couple of things that were very interesting. And I think that's what you're referring about the Kitat Konanut. Most of the communities don't have professional firefighters for them. We have a couple of stations in the bigger places. That means that all the small, isolated areas, for example, like last week, we spoke with a fireman volunteering from the Jordan Valley. And he said, in the case of a fire, it's going to take minimum an hour 15 from somebody to come from the big stations. Okay, so we get to this station. So, first of all, they tell me a lot of them are volunteers. Then they tell me we're not covering the isolated places. And then what I found amazing is the fact that the long conversation was about the controlled fire, meaning, and I'll explain it in my perspective, and then you can share how what it means professionally. Is the fact that if you are covered in an area with bush, with trees, with whatever that can get into a fire, the smartest thing we do is to control fire and make a fire by yourself, control it, and burn all the hazard that might come attack you in daytime. You are going to prevent in advance any fire near your community. Share about that because I remember it blew my mind. It was new for me, and unfortunately, it was new for them.
yeah. This is a preventative. So this there's two types of using fire. One is tactically, where you're controlling a big wildfire by lighting a controlled fire in front of it or near it to burn out areas so the fire is starved of fuel and you can control a big fire that way. But the other way to use fire is preventatively, and that's where there's no fire burning. We're doing this purely in advance for the future. And that's where, in the cooler months, where it's a bit more moist and it's safer to do controlled burning, you light small fires and you use the wind to your advantage and also the angle of slope. So you burn from the top of the hill slowly down the hill. So the flames are very small, and all it does is burn off the dead grass and twigs and branches and all the leaves that have collected over the years. But because you're burning from the top of the hill down the hill slowly, it burns very slowly. The flames are very small, and it only burns the dead material. It doesn't actually destroy the trees. And by doing this, you're actually protecting the forest from wildfires. Because when a wildfire does come along later, maybe that summer or 2 years from there, there's less fuel for the fire to burn. So the fire will be less intense where you have done the preventative burning. And if you do this strategically around communities, you may have a large wildfire burning towards a community, and then it will hit the area where you have treated it with controlled fire. And it's like turning a gas fire, turning the gas down. And you'll see the fire come through. It'll be really big. It'll hit that controlled area and the fire will go down. And then when it gets close to the community, it will hit your fire break and it'll go down even more. And then guess what? You're able to protect the community. Whereas if you don't do this, the fire will just come through like a train and it'll just take out whatever's in front of it. So yeah, that's basically the principle.
And I want to say that today, and if we're talking about like what happens right now in Israel, you came when it was balloons from Gaza and fire from Gaza. Right now, we know that the fire that they threw to us on the 7th of October was much wider. Now, the two places that are dealing with fires in a really big way is the northern border, is the
Yep.
Galilee, is the Golan Heights, and mainly it's not because of arson attacks. It's because there are many missiles, and when our missiles are targeting them, like small pieces fall in different places, and it catches into the very hot, very dry weather we have in Israel in the summer, and we have fires all over the place. And you can see, and you saw probably huge areas are burned in the north right now. It's unbelievable to see, and you see that they're fighting it with as you said, with bare hands, like with nothing. And now I'm going back down to Judea and Samaria, and we are finding in the last weeks hundreds of percentage increase in arson attacks. What's more sophisticated? You come, you make a fire, you want to burn a community. You don't need to kill anybody from inside. You go to the field, you burn it, and don't worry, the fire is gonna do its work. Timothy, have you ever experienced something like that, like in the scenario of a terror attack? And with that, what do you think a community can do? A small isolated community, what do they need to have to fight just initially this fight? I would love to have your recommendation.
Okay, so with the terrorism, the terror fire attacks, the arson attacks, there's nothing really you can do to prevent this. So the only thing you can do is prepare. And my program that I'm pushing, training is very, very important so that the first responders in the community can safely attack the fires, and they can do it effectively with the equipment they have. Number two, they need to be dressed properly, so they need firefighting uniforms so they're protected while they fight the fire. Uh, they need better equipment. There's two major pieces of equipment that they use, and that's the trailer. The trailer, very, very basic trailer with normal wheels on it. They can get bogged easily if they go off the road into a field. So they usually just stick to the roads. And then you have the ATV, the buggy, or you call them tractors over there, but they're basically a little four-wheel drive buggy. They have about 100 liters of water, so very limited, but they're very, very good at putting out grass fires. Uh, then we have the issue of the communities being having too many fire hazards inside the communities. There's outside the community from the fence into the forest or into the fields. A lot of the time, there's not enough space between the vegetation and the fence, and then inside the fence, especially in the north right now, because there's so many evacuated communities, the grass is growing to be done.
Timothy, you freeze.
We pause there for a second, or did you hear what I said?
Right, right. Can you repeat with the situation you said with all the attack, with all the people evacuated?
Okay, yeah, I think we're breaking up a bit, but yeah, so the evacuated communities in the north and also in the south, but mostly in the north, a lot of the evacuated communities, they still have emergency volunteer teams in the communities, between 6 and 20 people, depending on the size of the kitzot Kunanut. But all the residents, because they're evacuated, there's no one there to cut the grass. There's no one there to rake the leaves and to take the branches away. So there are whole communities inside the community, around the houses, and all the gardens and the parks. Outside the community in the fields, there's a lot of overgrown grass everywhere. And so where people would normally be plowing fields or cutting grass, and animals would be eating the grass as well, none of that's happened. So there's a lot of communities. There's hundreds of communities that are at risk of getting burnt down. Uh, even from natural causes. And so now that we have rocket starting fires, and there's going to be a lot more arson attacks as well, it's a really bad, serious situation for ordinary communities on the periphery. And the communities that are on the periphery, they don't get a fire truck coming to them when they need it, especially in wartime. It's going to be even worse. So these communities need to be self-sufficient. And that's what my program is aiming to do, is give them self-sufficiency with training, PPE, protective uniforms, working on getting them better equipment and working on wildfire prevention. It needs to happen. If we're going to save communities, we need to do something about it. It needs to be serious. That's why I developed the program.
So, Timothy, I
Yep.
just want to say that we are dealing with the communities in Judea and Samaria, and we believe that what you are presenting is not important; it's crucial. And just like we have the self-response team for security issues, I think we need to develop more first response team fighting fire. It needs to be an obligation of every community. And we're going to do everything in our effort to help them get the right equipment. And Timothy, the next time you're going to come to Israel, or maybe we're going to set it on Zoom, we want to hear from you and we want you to bring your knowledge to the communities. It's not a, a nice to have anymore. It's mandatory, it's crucial, and it's super important to have, and we will do it together. And I want to thank you for your time today and the amazing thought of other people other than your surrounding area. Such an amazing person. Thank you so much. And I want to really dedicate this conversation to all the brave volunteers. And without the knowledge and without the being ready, they understand they need to do something and they're fighting for it. And I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Shmuel. It's an absolute pleasure to speak with you again. God bless you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.